Good evening and welcome to MTV Community Focus. My name is Byron Campbell and I'm your host. I will be introducing my co-host in a moment, but let me just say briefly that Community Affairs is a live television program consisting of in-depth interviews with newsworthy personalities, policymakers, community stakeholders, and industry leaders. Community Forum will provide audiences with news of the period and a perspective on what's making headlines in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. It will bring facts, insights, and analysis on community matters. There will be, we hopefully, candid conversation and without the spin. Let me introduce here my co-host for the evening and for the program, Christopher Allie. Christopher, good evening. And of course, I don't have to tell you welcome. You're part of this INFACT program, but welcome, and you can proceed, Chris.
Byron, it's a pleasure to be here. I think Community Forum is going to give the kind of information that I think we need and different perspectives on issues in particular. And I'm happy to be here, and a very good night to all our viewers. And you know, we're going to start this ball rolling and see where it gets. And hopefully we will be able to contribute.
One of the things I want to tell the audience that Community Forum will have a call-in section. Right. But what is critical here is that we will demand respect. If you're going to call into the program, we want respect. You have to be respectful, else you will be removed from the program, disconnected, so to speak. But we want to be open. We want to cover matters that interest the community, political matters, economic matters, social matters, agriculture, whatever is taking place in the community. And that is where the names come from. That's why we call it Community Focus. We want to focus on matters of interest to the community. But Chris, what's been happening with you? I know that you're no longer in the, I'm so used to saying senator, but you're no longer in the Senate, of course. How many years did you perform there?
Almost 15.
15 years. So that's 4 terms?
Yeah,
you were there?
Yeah,
4 terms?
And I left as Deputy President.
Deputy President of the Senate. So, wow. And of course, in your primary job, you're the CEO at Citizens Paints Grenada. And I know recently there's been a huge development there. What, Paint World? Paint what? Paint?
Yeah, Color Shop.
Color Shop, yeah. Color Shop. Awesome. Now, and one has to recognize the contribution you've been making to this company and the economy in Grenada as a whole.
Yeah, well, I mean, Citizens has been around almost 40 years now, 38, and I've been with the company almost that amount of time. So it's a lifetime in one company. We have expanded significantly in those years. I mean, when we started many years ago, and I don't want this to be about a Citizens thing, but just briefly to say that when we started in Hubbard's building, we were probably about 10,000 square feet of space in utilization, and now we triple that. So we're doing 19 and 7, up to about 26,000 square feet now in terms of space utilization and so on. And we have grown. You know, when we went to Frequente, we were 35 staff. You know, almost to 50. Capacity has doubled. So I used to make 1 million liters of paint a year. We now to 2 million. So it has been one of those projects of mine and Citizens to build a company, strengthen it, and get it to where we want.
Awesome! Congratulations. It tells me that there's talent in Grenada.
Oh yeah.
But I want to also broadly recognize your contribution because for all these years you were representing the Chamber of Industry and Commerce at the Senate and the business sector generally, and to recognize that important contribution you've made.
Yeah, well, you know, my Senate time was primarily, I always said to you, Byron, I said it before, that it wasn't about, the laws and making the laws, but it was to communicate to the average man on the street and educate the average man on the street what we did in the Senate. If we pass a law, how it would affect his life, his or her life. And I am hoping that in that time I spent, I was able to contribute to some respect in that. And it was a really good experience to understand what it is to serve at the highest capacity in the country, in the Senate, and how you could contribute to the average person that this is not just a play situation, it's laws we're passing, The laws will have effects on what we do and how we do it. So it's important to pay some attention.
Yeah.
And of course the debates, your debate, and the debates was primarily to increase the information and increase the perspective of people's take on matters and not make it only political or otherwise. And to give some perspective in that. So it was my hope that in the time I spent there, almost 14 years, almost 15, that I would have contributed somewhat to that, and I'm hoping that I did. So but our contribution doesn't stop, and hence this program. I think education of our fellow Grenadians is a paramount thing, and there are a number of issues that continues to go on in our country, social and otherwise, that we need to comment on and give people a wider scope of thinking about how it is and challenge them, to think differently about situations. So I am happy to be, facilitating this as best as I can and as best as we can.
That's correct. That's correct.
And have guests come on the program that, we could challenge with difficult questions.
That's correct. And tonight, Chris, of course, we'll be talking about a multitude of issues this evening. And I can tell you that we'll be talking about, there's a huge list. We'll be talking about recently the IMF team was in Grenada, released their report, actually. We want to talk about community matters. There is spice mass. There is, we want to talk about issues of the community, the type of violence we're seeing among young people. We want to talk about the environment, what's happening there. We want to talk about the vehicular traffic situation, and the politics, of course. There's a lot of drama, you could call it that, Chris, within the politics. We is very interested, very dynamic, and we're going to have an interesting evening.
I think so. I know you like the politics, so when you talk about it, you get excited. Yeah. So man. So let's get going.
Right. So we're going to take a short break. However, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Concerned about your general health and wellness?
Do you need to know your complete blood count, lipid profile, or HbA1c?
Maybe you need to get a renal, thyroid, or liver function test.
Interested in STI screening for HIV, syphilis, herpes, chlamydia, or gonorrhea?
All of these tests, plus hundreds more, are available at Allied Laboratories.
Allied Laboratories welcomes you. You can find us here on Gladstone Road in Grenville, in the building next to Calico, on the second floor, adjacent to Dr. Isaac's office. Or you can find us here on Grand Anse Main Road, adjacent to South Winds, opposite the entrance of XL Plaza. Contact our Grenville branch at 410-3488 or 419-1588, or send us an email at alliedlabgrenville@gmail.com. You can contact our Grand Anse branch at 403-3488 or 404-3488, or send us an email at alliedlabstgeorge@gmail.com.
Fit for life and Allied Laboratories, we're taking care of Grenada.
Welcome back to Community Forum. I'm here with my co-host Chris Allie, myself Byron Campbell. Welcome, Chris. Of course, last week it was, the IMF Grenada staff concluding statement of the 2023 Article 4 mission. The report given was balanced. I think it was mixed, however, some positive but significant recommendations. I would say I want to highlight here the point about the GDP estimated to have expanded by some 6.4%. But tourism, interestingly, is beginning to recover and they reported that as much as 80% pre-COVID numbers in terms of the growth in that sector. What is your overall take on the report, and what do you see as the key aspects of it?
Well, I would comment by saying that I think it was a good report.
Yeah.
I wouldn't hesitate to say that.
Okay.
Our economy has been resilient,
Yeah.
to use those words.
Yeah.
The last government had a lot of programs in place and
Yeah.
was working closely with the FRA,
Yeah.
Financial Responsibility Act. And I think the IMF came not only to assess what was doing, but to see how we were comparing to what we set in that. Remember, we suspended the FRA because of the situation we had with COVID.
Yeah.
And I think the government was bringing it back and getting it back. So our new government came in and they obviously would bring it back and start falling under the rules of the FRA and some of the objectives and KPIs for one performance indicators that we set there. So I think against that context, the IMF report would have looked at all of that. And granted, our economies have started to recover from COVID, particularly tourism, which is cited in the report.
Yeah.
And construction is also doing very well. Grenada has a very buoyant construction industry, not only fueled by the public sector investment program, but also you're seeing a lot of other buildings going on in the private sector and construction happening there. So there is a confidence, and that is a key. When the government is able to ensure that people still have a confidence in what is happening, their programs, private sector programs, the environment that is created, people are willing to invest, and that is important. Our government kept CBI to the point where this is an important issue for them, and you're seeing investments coming through CBI and so on. So I think overall, IMF report spoke positively about GDP.
One of the areas that they pointed out or they highlighted in financial institutions and particularly cooperatives pointed out there's been growth in that sector, but they're recommending greater discipline there. They noted and compliance. They noted that the non-performing loan has in fact grown to about 8.4%, which they felt that they need to put a handle on and greater emphasis. What do you make of that aspect of the report in terms of the financials?
It is a concern because the credit union movement is a huge movement in terms of the credit union movement is $1 billion in assets.
Yeah.
So it's a significant player in the financial sector. And you cannot risk and have any systemic risk affect that sector, the economy. So we have to be very careful of what happens there. And the non-productive loans is an issue that needs to be looked at. And you know, the principle of credit unionism, sometimes you will see NPLs going there. But I think part of the issue is, I think Governor Timothy Antoine alluded to it the last time he was here in an interview. The credit union movement want to play more and more into the banking type arrangements. So they want to go into commercial loans and so on.
Yeah.
That require greater analysis, that require greater compliance issues. And if you really want to play there, you have to, of course, adjust what you do. And the non-productive part of the loan portfolio will obviously increase. If you get too bad commercial loans, it
destroys
chews it up.
Yeah.
And so there is that. And then, of course, there is the aspect of anti-money laundering issues and AMTL laws. And not all the credit unions have compliance departments. Because of size and so on. And so the credit union movement have some work to do and to get them more organized in that fashion.
They are regulated under GAFIN.
That's right.
GAFIN. But also looking at and again I'm referencing the report, looking at the commercial banks, they reported that loans remain sluggish. The banks are not getting enough productive projects for financing. So that's an issue. So how do we change this scenario? They have money, lots of money. In other words, but they are not getting the type of projects to finance of a productive type.
And that is a challenge. And that is a challenge because you want projects, and I suspect this is why the government is looking at things like the orange sector for the creative arts and so on, the blue economy and the orange economy, and see how we could get things to happen differently so that we could come to the banks with bankable projects, and not sometimes...
So it's a private sector issue.
Yes.
The funds are there, the money is available.
Correct. And you have to give, the government has to create the environment. That's what the government is there for. So looking at these different set of economies in the different areas, you know, traditionally we have always been agriculture and tourism.
Tourism,
right? And to some extent, education services.
So Chris, you touched on the creative economy, and I want to give kudos, credit to the government for the Unleash, it was called, that, was it called, the creative sector. It was always there, but I think here you see a policy that is bringing it together, that is giving recognition to it, and calling on the financial institution. This is a sector that can generate profitability, that can generate employment, that can generate livelihoods. And I was particularly impressed with Killer. I don't know if you heard his rendition, his statement, and wow, I just thought that it got a wow from me. I thought it was, but kudos for this activity. It generated a lot of interest, and it showed that if this sector is organized from a policy point of view and promoted, it can have far-reaching consequences as far as economic development.
And you know, Jamaica is a good example of the orange economy. And what
you call it orange, right? Why orange, Chris?
Well, I don't know why they call it orange, but I mean, that's what.
It's not blue, certainly.
No. Blue is for the sea, and so
yes, that's correct.
The green is environment, and creative is orange. I don't know why they call it orange.
We'll stay.
When you look at what that has done for Jamaica and its economy, and putting Jamaica on the map. As a region. Now, that is the indirect benefit of this. If you could have one export of that service in the orange economy, whether it's through calypso, whether it's through dance, whether it's through creative paintings, whatever it is, it gives you the sense that you put your country on the map without effort. Everybody going to want to know, where is this country that's doing this? Or have this, you know, beat. We have the jab beat. You know, everybody comes to Grenada to pay jab. We have not really exported that in a sense of getting it, but it is ours. You know, at 100,000 jab. You know, it's ours. You know, and even the beat that associates with it, the musical aspect of it. So we now understanding the potential of these things, and people gravitate to these things. So as you say, policy now will put it in context. Policy now will focus it a little more, and then institutions will come in. And there's a whole aspect about film and what happens on that part. And we have a lot of creative young people. And you know, instead of becoming a traditional doctor and engineer and so on, why not become, you know, Chris de Riggs or you know, these kind of guys that could create and express social issues through theater and all of that.
Are the financial institutions listening, though? You think, I mean, all loans carries a certain risk. I mean,
well, that's correct.
What do you see as how are the financial institutions going to respond to this? Do you think they're going to buy into this? Because for its success and growth, you will need the financing aspect.
Well, you know, I don't think we can't think about this as traditional financial institutions approach, because the risk associated with it initially is going to be relatively high. So you will have to go to developmental type banks to help finance and move this in a particular way. Grant funding will have to come in and see how it can assist with that. Because interest rates and risk profiles for the traditional commercial banks is going to be hesitant for them to come in immediately to finance projects under that. So it's going to be a slow build for them. And in any case, the cost of funds through the commercial banks may be too high for the initial start of this and the burden of this project. So it will have to be developmental funds that comes to help with the young projects and the projects
soft money.
Soft money,
loans.
that's right.
Okay. Well, one of the things that came to the fore also, Chris, was our debt to GDP ratio. We know that this was set at about 55% as a target, but now we know that it's almost 65%, and if you add Petrocarib to that, it goes to 80%. So should we be, one of the recommendations made, I think, by the IMF also was that we should relook that target, you know, and be more realistic in its approach.
Remember, these targets were initially set by ECCB, because ECCB wanted to get all countries in the Union at a debt level to GDP that hovers between 60 say 50 and 55 and 70%.
Yeah.
Remember, there were years ago, some of us 100+% debt to GDP.
Yeah.
So it was concerted efforts to try and manage debt in the countries and engage in debt that will promote social programs and productive sectors. So it is always going to be a challenge. But you see, what makes us, when you look at the medium-term strategic paper that was presented with the budget, one of the upside risks for us is natural disasters. And when these things happen, your debt to GDP ratio goes out of whack because of what the government now has to do to recover and so on. So we are constantly vulnerable to these things. So when our governments try to manage debt and manage the GDP, how do you expand services and sectors to improve the GDP and at the same time maintain your programs? It's not magic. It's always a tough call for our politicians to manage this situation. Because most of our financing is debt. We don't get much grant anymore. Of course, we have 100 and something million we got from the Green Climate Fund that we're doing, and we develop in the water sector and the sewage sector and so on. But these are not monies that come easily. And when you get it, you have to maximize the use of it. So the debt, is something that will always be with us.
One of the other areas, of course, surfacing there is the question, and I think I want to touch on the Frock report also just the same, because one of the issues there is project management and project implementation in particular. And again, mention is made there of how we accelerate project management, how do you get more results out of it. The funds are always there, but how do you spend it? We heard related to this is the recent talk from the British Fund, the grant financing, which was approved for both the Western Main Road and the Southern sewer project or expansion project. You're hearing two sides. What you hear is a government that says, look, we came into office and this is what we found, that the Western Main Road in particular, on the project a whole was at risk, and the government, the UK government, has had a change in policy. Of course, there's a new government in UK that has been relooking, but one of the reasons put forward was in fact slow implementation. It's cause for concern because
Byron, we have never had a good implementation rate in this country. We lose funds sometimes when we don't implement as required. And the issue is capacity. Capacity both physically in terms of equipment and so on, and capacity on the human resource side. And a lot of times we have to get consultants to come in to help us to move projects and to move it. So we as a people have an issue with capacity. And how you get that done is part of the problem. And UK SIF in particular, I mean, from my prior knowledge where I used to sit as a board member on different organizations, UK SIF funds was always available. But there was a technical aspect to the UK SIF and what was happening there with the engineers and the consultants that we were not satisfied as a country and had to send back. So sometimes you get these funds and it's available, but when the technical people come and start to do their work, you recognize they're not on the same page with us. And sometimes you have to redo it. And that causes a problem. The Western Main Road project got held up with the Molyneux issue.
Yes,
right? And that could have been probably moved faster, but the Molyneux issue was a curveball. We didn't expect the Molyneux issue to hit us.
Because I'm a resident of Molyneux, I'm from Molyneux. And as you touch on this project, Monk Morris, for example, where you have a bypass, and I want to appeal to vehicles going through the village to respect the tranquility and peace of the community, the loud music, the disposal of garbage from moving vehicles. It's a form of disrespect, In other words, you have to use the pathway, the Monk Morris village as a byroad because of the problems in Molyneux.
Hopefully Monkuma helps with that, no?
Monkuma helps more with the heavy traffic. So we're asking that, and I'm making a personal appeal to commuters to please, watch your speeds also through the village. There are children on the road, there's people walking.
So let me take this conversation a little on the side. And, I heard the police put out a statistic a few weeks ago. On average for the year so far, we are encountering 200 motor vehicle accidents on average every month. And we in May, June. I hear the figures for me, but up to April, it was averaging 200 motor vehicle accidents per month. Now, think about that.
Yeah.
That, in its sense, speaks to lawlessness. Yeah. It speaks to don't care, no defensive driving, speeding, and we have been having deaths on the road as a result of this.
Yes.
And for a country like ours, where there is limited space, and when you ask yourself the question, if I'm late to go in somewhere, you can't late twice, to be quite honest. So what is the sense of putting your life at risk and other innocent people's life at risk in the speeding? And getting that. And in any case in Grenada, you know, Byron, if you overtake me 3 times, you're reaching 10 minutes more than me. Probably more than 5 minutes.
And you see it all the time. You see it all the time, yeah.
So you really have to appeal to our young people and the other people who engage in these activities to keep it down. Yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, we have a country that we have issues that's coming up that we need to speak to. And when you were mentioning the FROC, I think the FROC highlighted a number of areas that we needed to adjust and to look into. One of the things that the FROC highlighted as well was the debt situations with statutory and non-statutory players and what happens there with that. Yeah. And that has always been a complaint of the FROC. And over the years, I know the last FROC had cited these same things, and they're trying to make adjustments to see how they can rectify some of these things.
But I want to take you back to the traffic too, because so we have 60,000 vehicles in Grenada. So here's the thing: our roads are generally in bad condition. We know that, and when I say that, not just the physical road, but how we use the road. We park in the road.
I don't even want to go there. I'll get emotional.
We park in the road. Vehicles are affordable. Financial institutions are providing financing for vehicles. And why not, you know? The question is, how do we manage the whole traffic environment, you know? In Grenada case, we have limited the importation of vehicles up to 10 years old. I understand in Trinidad it's 5 years old. But it's affordable, and as I said, why not? But the question comes is, how do we regulate? I mean, look at it. When you have a bingo, it's 4 or 5 cars being, those are the prizes.
Yeah,
so you're going to see more and more and more cars in the context that our road, the capacity of our road remains the same. In other words, we're not building new roads. So all these vehicles must fit on the existing road. So that in itself will create congestions.
Yes, and so we have the traffic.
And you have the traffic. Yeah.
And so we have new street lights, traffic lights going up.
Yeah.
And should be commissioned shortly.
Shortly, yes.
And they're coming with cameras.
With cameras, so
a lot of people are going to get caught when they break traffic lights, thinking that they get through and they didn't get through.
Yeah, exactly.
And will probably get a ticket in the mail.
Yes,
you know. And so again, the traffic lights will help regulate to some degree. But I think a bigger problem is pedestrian traffic and how that affects motorable traffic. Because we tend to believe in Grenada, once we reach a pedestrian crossing, we must cross immediately. Whereas in control of traffic and traffic flow, you have to build up. You have the lights, pedestrian crossing lights, will tell you hold for 20 seconds, let the traffic flow and then cross. So you could build up. But we now believe that once you reach a crossing, it's to cross one time. So the traffic constantly stops, and that builds the issue of congestion. And I mean, it's just one of those things that I don't know how we're going to deal with that traffic situation and the build-up. Because the other thing I want to quickly say.
Don't go ahead,
In the night, in the evening when people come from work, you have parts of this country. I just speak to Marian as an example, because I pass Marian all the time. And Monjaloo. Vehicles park on the road and you get down to single lane traffic. The double lane disappears. And if that parking is extensive and you pass to come out on the obstacle side, is drama when you meet somebody else coming down. And I mean, that is happening more and more and more. And our double lane traffic in some of these roads like Monjaloo and Marian and other roads becomes single lane in the night.
Brizan, for example.
Exactly.
But Molinier, you know, and Chris, we have a new commissioner of police now.
That's right.
I understand. Congratulations, sir. And we wish the retiring commissioner the best. But Molinier, I've been hearing conflicting reports on the status of the project, that it is paused for a moment now, that the the consulting engineers apparently were changed. There's a new look at the project because you still have fall. You have rock fall or debris falling off. Some piling had taken place, but clearly it remains a very dangerous environment. And hopefully, with the government looking at new technical requirements and looking at taking a new look at it, but we need to come off of there and to because that's a critical road.
It is, and the Molineux project would not have been an easy project from an engineering standpoint and because of soil type and fault in the areas and so on and so on. But our engineers are talented people. I mean, if you look at what the Chinese have been able to do engineering-wise and building roads and bridges and so on, it can be done. Now the issue is how do we balance that with the cost to the country of just that small section of road, although critical as it is. But you know, you have to balance always the cost with the engineering alternatives that are given.
Because remember, this is community forum, and why are you avoiding the politics? I've not heard you say a word about the politics. But let's take a short break and we come back, and that is where we'll go. Viewers, please stay with us. We'll be right back.
COVID-19 spreads from person to person through the droplets that are produced when someone coughs or sneezes, which makes it easy to spread between people in close contact. Now let's get prepared to stay healthy. To reduce your chance of catching or spreading COVID-19, practice these simple everyday preventative measures. Droplets can also land on surfaces, so ensure that you wash your hands frequently for a minimum of 20 seconds or sing the happy birthday song twice. Avoid touching your face, especially your eyes, nose, and mouth. If soap and water are not readily available, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer with an alcohol content between 60 and 90%. 70% is ideal. When you cough or sneeze, cover your nose and mouth with a flexed elbow or a tissue. Dispose of the tissue immediately and then wash your hands. If you notice someone has a fever and cough or other symptoms of respiratory illness, avoid close contact when possible. Let's all do our part to ensure that each and every Grenadian remains healthy. Our health is our collective responsibility.
Concerned about your general health and wellness?
Do you need to know your complete blood count, lipid profile, or HbA1c?
Maybe you need to get a renal, thyroid, or liver function test.
Interested in STI screening? For HIV, syphilis, herpes, chlamydia, or gonorrhea?
All of these tests, plus hundreds more, are available at Allied Laboratories.
Allied Laboratories welcomes you. You can find us here on Gladstone Road in Grenville, in the building next to Calico, on the second floor, adjacent to Dr. Isaac's office. Or you can find us here on Grand Anse Main Road, adjacent to South Winds, opposite the entrance of Excel Plaza. Contact our Grenville branch at 410-3488 or 419-1588 or send us an email at alliedlabgrenville@gmail.com. You can contact our Grand Anse branch at 403-3488 or 404-3488 or send us an email at alliedlabstgeorge@gmail.com.
Fit for life and Allied Laboratories. We're taking care of Grenada.
Welcome back to Community Forum. Chris, during the break, you mentioned briefly about sports, and you mentioned Karania, you mentioned Anderson.
Yeah, I want to extend, congratulations to our sporting athletes, and Anderson Peters won gold in his last event, I think this week or earlier on this week. Yeah. Kirani won silver, or just edged out from his goal.
That was a neck and neck.
Yeah. So, and then of course Chelsea Flower Show.
Yeah.
The Chelsea Flower Show, we won goal again.
That's how much goals. That's
quite a bit, I think it's 15. It's a lot of goals.
Yeah, so, it's a lot of goals.
I mean, we were positively international on the international scene. This little.
How do we benefit from this? I mean, what's the I think the exposure?
The exposure. For example, the Chelsea Flower Show is big exposure on the European side, and tourists, people who are into that type of florals and flora and fauna want to see where this place is that could win this medal, how much years going. So and I mean, of course, Kirani and Anderson Peters constantly put us on the map and get people to understand this tiny spot could produce athletes and individuals of international repute.
Yes.
I mean, it says a lot. So
it's a big deal.
Remember, Jamaica is known for Bolt.
Yes.
And when people want to come to the Caribbean, they think the Caribbean is Jamaica.
Exactly.
Because of all the sporting icons that have come out of Jamaica.
Yes.
So it is one of those things.
Kudos.
Man.
We also had a successful Whitsuntide Games.
Yes.
Where we showcased our local talent, young talent.
Young talent that's coming up, yes.
But Chris, the politics, and a new government, a year in office.
Almost. This month.
We also been following the developments within the NNP in terms of the Delma issue and her crossing of the floor, because it was dramatically done, the walkover and so on. What is your take on this? I mean, how do you see the politics going?
Well, I mean, I'm going to be brutal.
Yeah.
I think.
Yes.
I'm not a politician, so that's why I'm going to.
You could have fooled me, Chris. Being a senator is not it's politics.
Well, that's why I was an independent senator. Yes, you have to play some of the politics, but it's not the primary thing.
Okay.
I think NNP, if I would start there, and the Delma Thomas issue, I'm not certain as an outsider how well managed that was and what is happening there. Obviously, the NNP party is having issues with its
leadership,
and the executive and the people and so on inside there. And you would think that Dr. Mitchell's issue of not wanting to, as it would appear now, the leadership role of his party for whatever reasons that may be there. Is putting some strain in how things function with NNP. Obviously, you get a sense that there may be fractions in NNP now that may agree with Dr. Mitchell staying on us politically and those that don't. And some people and pundits have said the reason NNP would have lost the election is people wanted a change.
Yeah.
And Dr. Mitchell did indicate that this was his last salvo.
One for the road
kind of thing, which we had critique on another program.
That didn't work.
Right. So when you put all of that together, I think NDC, and you compare that to what is happening on the NDC side, I think Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell, has managed well in the year that he. Remember, this is a young group of guys who have come into government with very little or no experience on public service and functioning in government and so on. And in my view, they have learned rather quickly.
On the run,
and have done and instituted programs and maintained programs and so on from the last government that speaks to a certain level of maturity. And it has helped the economy in a certain way. So when you look at that, I mean, when you compare this young government and new government to what had happened in St. Lucia, where the new government had stopped every project of the last government and put the economy in a tailspin. This doesn't happen here.
Okay.
And you could see them pushing their programs, and it is creating a certain level of excitement in the economy. The IMF is a good example of that.
IMF report.
So I mean, when you look at it and you look at the Delma Thomas issue and how that was handled or not handled, you if you're an NNP supporter, you will have some worries about what is happening on that side. If you're an NNP supporter, you'll say, man, let them stay so for the rest of
because,
the
okay, Adelma, of course, we're looking at the St. Andrews Northwest. Here you had a situation that the NDC candidate, Ms. Thomas, lost by 70 votes. That was not a lot of votes, 70 votes. It means that now you have a Delma team, and she's now moving with her team. I'm certain is more than 70. It means that, or it tells me, and you project the medium long term, that would be a very difficult seat for the NNP to regain.
Yeah.
Clearly, just look at the numbers.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, Chris. The question is, given that situation or understanding the background, what's the modalities in that constituency, I agree with you how it was handled, because that is that's the net results of it. You've lost the seat for probably a significant period of time.
Yeah, the only thing in my view is something catastrophic had to happen on the NDC side to cause things to change significantly, politically that is.
Yeah.
And you have to say that if that doesn't happen, politically the new Democratic NDC party will, National Democratic Congress Party would continue to maintain a certain level of political strength. They're now at 10-5. Right? Probably that could go in the next election if nothing catastrophic happens. And if the NNP doesn't get itself organized. And in my view, we in June, if Dr. Mitchell doesn't call the convention between now and say next year March, I think the party is going to go into a serious, cardiac situation.
Because look at and let's follow up what Honorable Delma has what she said. Some of the issues she raised. She raised issues about she had raised with the leader about the possibility of Peter David. She saw him as one of the possible leaders of the party going forward. And look at the fallout also with the past Carrick who representative there, the lawyer. Stewart, she in fact showed up at Delma's meeting, high profile, and clearly Kendra Stewart, and demonstrating a point that was very clear that all is not okay. I didn't like how I was treated because Delma elaborated on this, her appointment to the Senate, and then that being withdrawn, and that whole thing. So I agree with you that the faster the NNP focus or calls its convention and deal with the leadership issue, you probably could continue to have fallout in a situation going forward.
You also get a sense of where they've been washing, for want of a better word, dirty in the public now. That Dr. Mitchell has been a maximum leader. And there's nothing wrong with being a maximum leader. When you're head of a cabinet, sometimes you have to make this brutal decision.
There's nothing wrong with it, Chris?
Yeah, no. Well, you see, I was going to finish by saying is where you take the maximum leader to.
Okay.
Right. So you have to, normally they say a benevolent dictator is, for want of better words, is what you need to manage a cabinet and people with different views and so on. But when you maximize that to the point where nobody wants to talk and they become people are yes women and yes men, then you're a maximum leader.
In that
sense, and that cannot work and push you along because then all your critiques will stop. And you're not perfect. So you have to manage the maximum leader thing. So you get this sense from all of what is happening and what you're hearing now that style of Dr. Mitchell needs to be adjusted, if he can, at this stage. And if not, then do we have a new leader that could emerge that could give the party a different, fresher look? And so I remember when Dickon came into the political fray, he was a fresh, new face, and a lot of the traditional party people were pushed aside, for want of a better word, and they came with a fresh outlook.
You think the same thing is likely to happen with the
probably.
NNP?
I think, but for that to happen, Dr. Mitchell has to make a decision on whether he wants to continue or step aside.
Yes.
And give his blessing to whoever the party elects as a new political leader.
One gets the impression that he's bent on influence in that process.
Which he said he would not have done.
Yeah, so clearly one hear reports of meetings with, you heard Derek Sylvester name was called, you heard other persons was called. So clearly, well, he remains the leader of the NNP, and therefore that is one of the main focus of the party. One of the reasons I heard put forward that if convention cannot be held immediately is that more work needs to be done, more organizational work of the party needs to be done on the ground before you move to that. But there's no timeline put forward for this, but I agree with you that...
I don't buy that. One of the most organized political parties have been the New National Party.
Yeah.
They have a lot of structure in place.
Yeah.
They have a lot of their delegates organized by constituencies. That has been a party that have always had proper structure and administrative controls in place. They never had issues before to call conventions and whip up the delegates to come to contest. I mean, that is so to hear now they're saying they need time to organize that sounds.
And Chris, I mean, and these are some of the focus community forum. We want to hear from the politicians. We want to hear their views, and so viewers can expect that we'll have them on this table. Chris, Spice Mass 23, it's on. One of the big deal, you heard retired Calypsonians are saying, look, I'm coming back, $100,000, I'm on board, you know. Yeah. But it seems very organized from what I've been seeing. So for example, on social media, you've been seeing the Queen contestants, beautiful, gorgeous, how they're presented. One gets the impression it's a different approach to this, a more professional approach to this. But $100,000?
Yeah, well, I mean, the prize money has always been a thing that in the past, and this is for the Soca Monarch competition, I think. But I think to me what stood out this year was that not only did they launch earlier than normal, I think they launched in April or thereabout, early April. But when you looked at what was happening with the mass bands, the pretty mass bands, they launched since in March.
Yeah.
So, but in February, I think.
What about the exposure? What about the... I was in town, when was it? That was, I think it was last week, earlier this week, actually. And they were on the Esplanade, you know, and they look pretty new to me, Chris. I mean, like...
the level of costumes and what they play in is a different issue. But, I mean, I just think the organizing from not only the Spice Mass Corporation, but there's organizing from the band mass people, what is happening there, that is helping to push the carnival to a level where they think is going to be one of the best for this year. And of course, all the artists coming back. I would love to hope that they will start their tents earlier this year, so a lot of us could go on here.
The pan again.
So there is a nice energy and excitement, for want of a better word, here. And once we can maximize that, the amount of people here booking to come to Grenada Carnival already, I mean, hotels are booked out for August and that time already. So it is a good thing. Nothing is wrong with that. We just have to make sure we keep it clean and crime-free.
So we'll be talking about Carnival and the people involved. Chris, another thing that's clearly, this is community forum, the level of violence in our communities, particularly among youths, juveniles, murder, a lot of violent crimes, sexual violence against women. It's alarming. It's alarming, and in this forum, in this community forum, it's a subject matter that we'll be taking on with the main players. We have to deal with this. We have to get. This is unacceptable. It's the amount of murders. Generally, we've had 9 for the year. This is what we normally have 2 and 3 and 4. 9, and we're not 6 months yet. You know, this is unprecedented. You know,
and
how
the question is our issues now is the first way to resolve a conflict is through violence. Pull a cutlass, pull a knife, pull a gun. You know. And as a mediator, we try to, try and train more people to understand that is not the only way to solve an issue. If you have a dispute with somebody, we could talk, we could come together and not be violent. And there's a lot more work we have to do on that front. And,
so we're going to have to bring the players here, community leaders here, the community activists, and so this is going to be happening on Community Forum. This issue is hurting our communities. I mean, I saw a woman in a home in the rural community. She was terrified. There were gunshots on the house. scary stuff. So we have to.
And as I say, it's not only a Grenada problem. Huh?
No, it's not a great. No,
regional problem.
But I'm just saying, with us, what we're seeing is an escalation. So we got to deal with this. Chris, you ain't talk about agriculture.
Yes, and I think that's something we probably could close off with, because I know we're quickly running out of time. I am one of course, you know, I'm into agriculture like you, and we try and dabble and enjoy ourselves there.
That's right. Yes.
But I think a lot more work needs to be done. What I'm hearing from government in agriculture is not too encouraging. I think there is a lot more. I mean, we know the major issue in agriculture is labor, and I know they're working on a minimum wage thing to deal with some of that. But it's getting people to work in agriculture is a bigger problem. Then we had the pest issue in agriculture. We had the production issues. So there's so much there that needs to be, and of course, extension officers and what's happening. They are not happening there. There is a lot of work there, I think, and Byron, you have been in this for years, and I mean, you produce stuff that is exceptional. I mean, I have tasted them, so I can speak from evidence.
Okay.
But Chris, I think there's so much work there to do.
It's an area we're going to be covering a lot in Community Forum because, I mean, you can't have rural development without a robust agricultural sector, employment, probability, food security.
That's right.
So this is going to be a big one for us. We're going to spend a lot of time on rural development and agriculture in particular, tourism and other related areas. We're going to focus on governance in terms of 1 year in office. These are issues that we definitely will want to cover also. So there's a lot that we have to talk about in the upcoming period.
We could extend an invitation to our Prime Minister to come and talk about
well,
the 1 year
absolutely,
anniversary.
because what I want to say about Community Forum is we will take the spin out. We want to be fair, we want to be balanced. Of course, we want to be provocative, we want to challenge you, of course, but it's an opportunity for you to speak to the community and for the community to question you also, because as we said, we will have a calling aspect. We demand respect, however. But yes, so we do look forward in an exciting way to the coming weeks, the coming period.
Of course.
You know?
I am looking forward to
yes.
having those engagements.
And I really want to, as we say, big up, but to compliment MTV, the management here, for considering such a program and inviting us to be part of it. And I want to give full credit also to the persons that have been behind the scenes. Want to mention Dwayne Francique and his graphic design and other coordinating function, Nikita hosting. She's let me mention that Dwayne has been more or less as a technical director on this. Give him high marks for this. Nikita hosting behind the camera, the good works we see in there. We have Elton Maitland, we call him the switcher, and Gregory Mitchell focusing on the audio. So, I mean, this is not possible. We'll have this team. I mean, it's a sacrifice. I mean, they could have been other stuff, but see the need to come out here. So we look forward to an exciting period ahead.
Every Wednesday at 8:30.
Every Wednesday at 8:30.
Community Forum.
Community Forum. Join us. We're going to be frank. We're going to be open. We're going to be candid. And we'll have the people here that not just make the news, but have the influence of the community at heart, you know, and so to speak to the community. I want to thank you, viewers, for sharing this moment with us, and we see you next week, 8:30, next Wednesday. Thank you and good evening. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.